Snow fell like silent knives against the darkening sky, coating the frozen streets of the small frontier town in a merciless white that showed no sympathy for the poor souls, forced to walk upon it. And among them stumbled a thin woman named Clara, wrapped in a torn shawl that barely shielded her from the biting wind, her breath forming desperate clouds as she clutched a small basket to her chest, not for herself, but for the 3 little faces waiting inside the broken cabin. On the outskirts of town, their bellies empty, their cries echoing in her ears with every step she took. She had not eaten in 2 days, but the hunger of her children gnawed at her heart far more, brutally than her own starvation. And though pride once held her upright, that pride had frozen and shattered, along with her husband's life months ago when a mining accident buried him beneath the earth, leaving her alone, penniless, and indebted to a landlord who cared more for rent than for human suffering. So now she walked from storefront to storefront, hands trembling, voice barely audible as she whispered, "Please, just a little food. My children," only to be met with cold stares, slammed doors, or the cruel laughter of men who considered her misery entertainment. She stopped outside the general store, where warm light spilled through the frosted windows, and the smell of bread tortured her senses. And though she feared rejection again, she pushed open the door, the bell chiming weakly as every eye turned toward her shabby form. The storekeeper, a heavy-set man with a thick mustache, crossed his arms and said loudly, "We don't run a charity here." "Clara," making the customers snicker. But she bowed her head, voice breaking as she whispered, "I will work, I'll clean. I'll do anything, please, my children are starving." Yet he waved her away like an unwanted animal and added cruelly, "Come back when you have money," before turning his back on her. And humiliation burned her cheeks as she stepped out again into the storm, knees threatening to buckle, the world spinning from hunger and despair. But the image of her youngest child, little Rosie, crying weakly and saying, "Mama, my tummy hurts," forced her to continue. Clara moved to the bakery next, where warm rolls sat in the window, steam still rising, and she pressed her hand against the glass as though she could absorb the heat, whispering a prayer before entering. But the baker's wife, a stern woman with sharp eyes, immediately snapped, "Out! We can't have beggars bothering the customers." And when Clara tried to plead, the woman shoved her, sending her stumbling back out into the snow as laughter followed her, tears freezing on her cheeks. She sank to her knees, whispering, "God, please help me. My babies." But the only answer was the howling wind and the sting of ice against her skin. And for a moment she considered surrendering to the cold, letting herself fall asleep in the snow where she would no longer feel hunger or pain. But then a faint memory of her children's smiles flickered before her eyes, and she forced herself up again, staggering forward. She approached a saloon, the rowdy laughter inside promising warmth but also danger. Yet desperation pushed her through the swinging doors. And immediately the room fell silent as rough-looking cowboys turned to look at her, their eyes filled with curiosity, pity, or something far darker. She swallowed hard and said, voice shaking, "Please, does anyone have food to spare?" "My children." But before she could finish, a drunken man threw a peanut shell at her and shouted, "Get out of here, you worthless beggar!" While others laughed and jeered, and Clara felt humiliation crash over her like a wave. But before she retreated, a deep voice from the corner cut through the noise. Calm but firm. "That's enough." The room quieted as a tall cowboy rose from his seat, hat tilted low, coat dusted with snow, boots heavy against the wooden floor, his presence commanding respect. He walked toward Clara with slow, deliberate steps, his eyes not mocking but filled with a quiet intensity. And when he reached her, he removed his hat, revealing rugged features softened by concern as he asked gently, "Ma'am, how long since you and your young uns last ate?" Clara opened her mouth but could barely speak, her voice trembling as she whispered, 2 days. "Please, sir, I'm begging you." And her knees finally gave out. But the cowboy caught her before she fell, lifting her as though she weighed nothing, turning to the barkeep and saying, "Get this woman something warm, and pack food to take with her," his tone leaving no room for argument. The drunken man who had mocked her sneered, "Why bother? She ain't worth the trouble." But the cowboy's eyes turned cold as steel as he stared him down and said, "A man who laughs at a mother trying to feed her. Children ain't much of a man at all. silencing the room instantly. The barkeep hurried to bring a bowl of hot stew and bread, and the cowboy helped Clara sit, guiding the spoon to her lips when her hands shook too badly to hold it, and warm tears spilled down her cheeks as the heat spread through her body, bringing life back to her limbs. When she finished, the cowboy handed her a wrapped bundle of food and said quietly, "Take this to your kids." And as she clutched it like treasure, she whispered, Why are you helping me?" The cowboy paused, pain flickering across his eyes as he answered softly, "Because once I watched my own family starve, and I swore no child near me would ever go hungry again." And with that vow hanging in the air, he placed his coat around her shoulders and added, "Come on, ma'am, I'll see you home."